Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Thursday 905 Roundup. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And we have, a whole range of stories from who I just described before we came on air as the three horsemen of the apocalypse. I think that's probably a little bit grandiose, but you know. Horseman number one, Patrick Brown has, as we discussed last week, formally now announced his candidacy to be the leader of the Conservative Party, not the Prime Minister, as his rival is claiming. He's formally come out and said that. And well, what does this mean for Brampton? Joel, you have thoughts?
Yeah, it means that Brampton doesn't have a mayor for 6 months. That's I guess good for him if he thinks he can make it. Good. Apparently, his reputation is of an amazing organizer and an amazing sign upper of memberships, I guess is the technical term in politics. Which is kind of how he won the the PC leadership back in the day at the provincial level. That didn't work out so well for him, and he was forced to resign. I think it's a bold move, and it's a bold assumption on his part to assume, I can jump from being mayor of Brampton to being the leader of the Conservative Party. I kind of question in the caucus, like I'll criticism of Patrick Brown's mayoral campaign aside, I do question the intelligence behind making that jump, only because he was once a former MP underneath Stephen Harper, and this is a different caucus. It's a different Conservative Party. They have had people have lost, people have left, they've retired, new people have been elected. It's kind of bold of him to come in and say, "Well, I left you guys back in the day. I had some losses, and I got relegated. I managed to get a job working at Brampton. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to run you guys." I'm like, there's a little bit of gumption there that you kind of need to run, I guess, for leader, but
I think at the very least, obviously the man is extremely ambitious. Everything has been about where can I end up being, the big man on campus, so to speak, in one job or another, and at every level, he's got a long way, but he hasn't exactly covered himself in glory at any point. I think the most telling one is what happened with the PCs, so close to the 2018 election. Mm-hmm. In retrospect, you would think that the Liberals were in such trouble, clearly, that it really didn't matter who was the leader of the PCs, that they probably would have won anyway. However, he was so disliked by his caucus, and the reports I remember, these are rumors, I didn't see this firsthand, but the reports I heard at the time was that he was a very isolated leader of the Progressive Conservatives, and that the caucus was not exactly being what the caucus is supposed to be, which is the cheerleaders for the leader. That's how, for better or worse, that's how our political system tends to work. So the ease with which he was shown the door, and obviously the allegations were very serious, and the timing and everything was blah blah blah.
But you didn't see a lot of caucus members coming to his defense.
No, that was which is why he was so bitter, and why he threw Vic Fideli under the bus, and why and then Doug Ford added insult to injury by taking away his substitute job, which is to be regional chair, and forcing him to his third choice, which was Brampton. And poor old Brampton can't catch a break. The last three mayors since 2000 two of them have clouds over their heads at the very least, shall we say? Clouds.
Well, Patrick Brown is leaving. Let's not say with a cloud, but definitely with uncertainty over of his tenureship as Brampton mayor. Again, like there's something to say. Okay, you're a successful mayor. I think if you can run for re-election and win, which is, let's face it, in this province, it's very easy to do at the municipal level. I think it's, as we said in the last episode, last roundup, just how it's just, I find it's unsatisfactory that he's not going to face re-election as mayor to the people of Brampton and say, will you give me another chance to be your mayor? And that to me always strikes me as that. I mean, that really is the only way we can express our favor or disfavor with our elected officials is at the ballot.
Yeah, and I mean, we're assuming here. Here's what we do know: he's still the mayor of Brampton today. He's just that he's. We also know that if you're running a leadership campaign, you're not spending a whole lot of time doing a second job. That's a full-time job from now till September. So he's not going to be active mayor.
He can't be attending city council meetings, talking about budgets and whatnot. If he's got to be running off to Saskatchewan or to Alberta to go talk to Fort McMurray Tory the Tory Association out in Fort McMurray or in downtown Calgary and start trying to win over their favor.
But he could be back. I mean, he might still end up facing the electorate in that he might not become the leader of the CPC, in which case he's going to come back to his other job. But yeah, I don't think. No, you're absolutely right. He's not going to be acting in any significant manner as mayor of Brampton between now and September.
No,
I don't think I would put him as an outsider, other than, as you mentioned, you're absolutely right. He has shown that one thing he seems to be extremely good at is signing up those members and getting them to come out and vote for him. And I think, he certainly showed that in the PC.
I would suspect what you'll see happening over the next 6 months is he'll come out of left field closer to the September 10th. I believe the CPC leadership election is September 10th, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So I suspect somewhere closer to that date, you're going to see a ton of membership signups by his organization. Not enough to secure his nomination as the candidate, but enough for him to have some power. And I think what he'll want to be is the kingmaker. So, and this is me entirely hyperbolizing, or not hypothesizing, I should say. I got my H's wrong, but hypothesizing, he's going to want to become the kingmaker. So he'll want to have enough votes and points. The convoluted CPC leader electing system is complicated enough, but he'll want to have enough power under his name that he'll be able to go to, I suspect it'll be Pierre Poilievre or Jean Charest, and say to them, will you give me I want a primo cabinet spot. When you guys get elected to prime minister, I want primo cabinet spot, right next to I want the nice corner office. And well, that's what I suspect is going to happen. And you'll see it happen on September 10th. There'll be the back and forth, who's coming where, and you'll see they'll have Jean Charest or Pierre Poilievre will make a deal with Patrick Brown, and that'll come through. I think that's the best case scenario for Patrick Brown. I really don't see. I really, outside of Ontario, I don't see him having a huge amount of clout. I don't like. Why would somebody in Alberta care about Patrick Brown? Why would somebody?
Yeah, he doesn't have the profile. He doesn't have the profile that obviously Charest has. Obviously, Poilievre has. They, for better or worse, they are nationally recognized names. I think this is Poilievre's to lose. I think, again, for better or worse, this is the way the CPC is. CPC membership has declared itself the party of the right of the increasingly extreme right will not distance itself from that, and so they ultimately they're going to run an election with Canada's Trump, and I think to me Poilievre is that man, and I think he will win easily. But we'll see. It's
yeah.
I don't usually make predictions, but I think in this case that it just seems like this is just the way history is going. It's the way that party has been going.
Yeah, but I think Patrick Brown wants to. I think Patrick Brown's. His track record in the past has been just that. Like he'll want to be. I think I just don't see him being able to come in and winning the leadership without some kind of backroom dealings. And I would suspect if he had enough members signed up that his name has some weight, that's the thing. He has some power to go to Poilievre or Charest and say, what will you give me to be the number 2 choice on my ballot, so to speak? Because the fourth candidate, Leslyn Lewis, she helped. She helped the Aaron O'Toole win a little bit, but I don't. She has a strong social conservative background, social conservative bona fides that will go far in that party, I'm sure. I just don't know if it's enough to put her over the top. Maybe things have changed in the last 3 or 4 years since Aaron O'Toole was elected as leader. I don't know, but I don't think she has. From what I've read, there's been some problems in her campaign. Just so logistically, I'm not sure that's going to be a problem. But apparently, if Patrick Brown keeps his shoulder down, shoulder to the wheel, and does the work and signs up enough people, he might have enough to give himself a nice job in a cabinet post at some point down the road. At least that's the calculation I'm betting that he's making, because I can't imagine if he loses, which I think he will, he's going to be able to come back and run for re-election of Brampton mayor and say, yeah, I want to run on my campaign. Like you bailed for 6 months of the year. For half the last year, you have not been in town, and you certainly have not been in town to do any duties as mayor. So, good luck to you on that re-election campaign.
Yeah, I don't know Brampton well enough to know. I mean, it seems like it plows its own route with how it chooses its mayors. Let's put it that way. If I was a resident of Brampton, I would be thinking, well, he's shown very clearly what he thinks about this city, and we should vote accordingly. But let's take a quick break, I guess, and we'll come back and discuss another side of the leadership, the CPC leadership, which also relates to our region, in a few minutes. And welcome back. And the PCs, the Ontario PCs, or Doug Ford, has kind of made a somewhat interesting comment, basically warning his MPPs not to get involved in any significant way in the leadership contest. And what does this mean? I mean, when I initially read it, I thought he was basically telling his candidates, telling his MPPs that none of them should think about running. But I actually think it's more about telling them just not to back candidates, not to get involved, which is not unusual in some ways. I mean, we've seen that with multiple parties.
It's a little weird at the leadership race. Because people remember back in the last federal election, which really was not that long ago, though it feels like a lifetime ago, Ford told his caucus, no, you're not helping out your conservative friends. And he himself stayed. People were wondering, where's Doug Ford during the whole federal election? And he stayed silent. Partly, I think it was because he just realized, I'm going to have to ask somebody to help bail me out of this COVID mess down the road, and I don't want to be on the wrong. I don't want to burn bridges there. I don't think that's quite the calculation this time. Part of me wonders. I think he just wants, like, he's got his own election coming up. I think he says he just wants people focused on this. Quite frankly, I don't think he wants.
Yeah, I mean, there is that element, which is like, what he's saying now, and until June the 10th or whatever day it is, it could be very different to what he says after June the 10th, when win, lose or draw, people may be able to do whatever they want. But I guess the article in the Star is from Robert Benzie, a long-time Queen's Park bureau chief. And he mentions just how closely Doug Ford has worked with the Prime Minister and with Chrystia Freeland for the last 2 years. I'm not sure if that's something we're meant to read between the lines there, that maybe Doug isn't that warmly motivated towards the federal CPC. I mean, to an extent, he's not an anti-vaxxer. He's not. I mean, the members of his caucus are. I don't think there's any great secret there. But he himself is moderate in comparison with the. It seems strange to say moderate, but moderate in comparison with what seems to be fairly mainstream in the CPC. So maybe it's a matter of keeping away from the scary people.
I would imagine part of it is. I think it's the after effects of the trucker convoy. That I really think he knows that is a death wish to. I should start at the start. I'm jumping in the middle here. I mean, let's face it. Pierre Poilievre is wearing that to the day he dies. That is his baby. He now has to double down on that. Wherever he goes, he can't do this. We only support the good truckers. No, that trucker convoy ended up with the Emergency Act, invoked. They had trucks being impounded, arrests were made, all that stuff, and everybody associates now Pierre Poilievre with supporting it. He was waving the flags. He was cheering with the supporters, same as. A number of other candidates who are running. I think he wants to distance himself as much from that as possible. He's coming up into an election. The last thing he needs is to defend a Tory caucus member who is going to be glad-handing with Pierre Poilievre or Leslyn Lewis. And when they say something about the trucks for freedom convoy is, we need, that's the people we want to support. That's a tricky pickle to figure out on the Hustings. And I think he's smart enough to say to his people, I don't care. Just, we got to say the quiet part quiet and the loud part loud, is what's going on here.
It certainly says something. I mean, you would hope if you're running a leadership campaign federally, in normal circumstances, you want to kind of, the government that's in power often wants to sort of pick up some of the reflected glamour of a new candidate, someone who doesn't have the barnacles attached to the hull that a government attracts. And we're actually not seeing that. It looks a bit like Doug Ford basically saying, keep away from those people. That they are nothing but harm for our chances of re-election in the summer. And if you think that basically there's no way to, I was going to say Sussex Drive, but wherever the Prime Minister lives, that doesn't go through Ontario, that's kind of just says once again that the electoral math that's involved with the CPC's kind of headlong obsession with going further and further right just doesn't seem to add up to me. But no, I fear I'll be proved wrong at some point. But
it doesn't. I mean, let's face it. You're right. You said earlier it's Pierre Poilievre's to lose, and I think you're dead on with that analysis. And if he is the leader of the Tories, I'll be honest. What's to like about him? Like, what is it that's appealing to him, other than if you're just an angry white guy who wants to just spout off conspiracy theories? He'll like, there's nothing to like about it. And I for all Doug Ford's faults, and he has many, I want to say he kind of knows, okay, this is just a mess I don't want to get involved with. He knows perfectly well when to duck and cover, and I think he's reading, oh, no, this is a grenade that I don't want to jump on. My people, stay indoors. Don't help these people. What strikes me is that it's kind of a further, we're breaking away of the federal Conservative Party. Like there seems to be a breaking away of the provincial and federal wings of the party. You and I both know that the federal and provincial wings of like the Liberals, definitely the NDP, they're very tightly knit together. They're very, same people usually end up working on the same staff. You get people, the volunteers are always called upon in the same case to go knock on doors, and you kind of look in the same pools of people to drum up your candidates. There's a lot of ties there. Doug Ford seems to be severing his ties with the federal party slowly but surely. He didn't help in the last federal election, and he's not helping with this leadership campaign. And you got to wonder, what does that say about the federal Conservative Party? That right now, the one of the most successful, like it or not, folks, one of the most successful Conservative premiers, politicians in Ontario's history, is I'm talking politically, of course, is saying, no, I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want to expel any political capital on helping you win. That's a pretty damning indictment of the CPCs if I've ever heard one. Because you're going to get out in Alberta, Jason Kenney, and Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, helping Pierre, presumably not going to, drum up support. Big whoop-de-doo. That's Conservative heartland. That's the Conservative roots right now. But how are you going to help, or who's going to help you in BC, especially out east? Like the conservative, those are not the same as federal Conservatives on the eastern part of the province. You just seem to see a big disconnect between the CPC and its provincial counterparts.
Yeah, and the problem with and we're not saying anything that actually most of our listeners don't know already, which is that the CPC, since it became the Reform Party under new management, so to speak, it is a party of the West and a party of Alberta and Saskatchewan in particular, and not a party that seems able to do what is necessary to appeal to a national audience. And I mean, okay, I mean, it's like whatever. If you want to keep on banging your head against the wall, have at it, guys. But it's ultimately not. Well, I mean, the fact that they're going more and more to the right and making more and more unreasonable positions effectively mainstream by their endorsement of them, basically endorsing an open attempt at rebellion and overthrowing a democratic government in downtown, in many ways as bad, if not worse, as the January 6th actions in Washington. And at least that was over in a few hours rather than 2 weeks or whatever.
A month. It took a month.
Yeah. I mean, how quickly we forget, or I forget. It's deeply troubling. It's deeply troubling. It doesn't mean I don't see how, but I mean, our electoral system can do strange things, and people with small amounts of support can win government, because that's what happens every single time. So it's not great. It's not great.
What other political news is happening around the 905? Political analysis can we give?
Well, I would say the third horseman of the apocalypse, perhaps the third donkey manager of the, I don't know.
Oh, don't be that angry. Don't be that angry.
Larry Diani has come out and had an opinion again. And for someone who apparently has been complaining about attention given to him by some Hamilton journalists, or one Hamilton journalist in particular, he seems to really like the attention, and he decided to take the opportunity to wade into Hamilton politics and say that the current council has gone far too to the left, and that the first thing he would do if he was back in council was make sure that statue of John A. Macdonald is put back on its pedestal. And it's like, really, this is what's most important for Hamilton right now, in the midst of pandemic, economy in doubt because of the global situation with inflation. Globally, inflation on the rise for the first time in 20, if not 30 years.
City infrastructure. I'm thinking of Sewergate. I'm thinking of the question of what are you going to do with the Hats site on the former Sir John A. Macdonald school grounds. What are you going to do about reforming building code or building permits, building practices? Your plans for downtown revitalization. I'll be honest. Most people have said, okay, the John A. Macdonald story, it came, it went. As we've moved on, we've realized, hey, we can get along just fine without John A. Macdonald's statue in Gore Park. It's not really that big of a deal. Again, it's this. I look at it like I don't even think it's Hamilton going left, like Hamilton City Council going left. Like, Lord knows, we've had people on this episode who think that they haven't gone left enough. They're still going right on a few issues. So that's entirely subjective in itself. I don't even view it as a left or right issue. I view it entirely as a case of long-sitting problems in Hamilton have finally come home to roost. There are long-standing issues that Hamilton City Council has long neglected, not just this one, previous ones that they've neglected. It's always been somebody else will come along and fix it. Somebody, we don't need to worry about it. Let's be parochial with this, speed traps on Adelaide or wherever, statues and parks, whatever. That's all parochial. What the real issues of how do you revitalize the downtown? What do you do with the housing issue that is facing Hamilton right now? The question that people have lost trust in their elected government. How do you rebuild that? These are these are huge issues that take more. There are people who have lost trust in the police department, in the chief of police. That is something that you just don't fix by saying, oh, you're just a lefty, commie lefty, and you need to fuck it up. That's not how you fix it. You gotta.
No, it throws oil on the fire, Absolutely. I mean, let's be in no doubt that comment was directly aimed at two people in particular, which is Maureen Wilson and Narinder Nan, who are both councillors for kind of central old Hamilton areas of central Hamilton. An attempt to get at them. Now, of all the councillors on that current council who don't routinely attract criticism, but rather commonly attract a deal of praise, it's those two. But they were the new faces in 2018. They were the two people who were often pretty much openly scorned by their colleagues, but they are also the two who, if this does prove to be a change election in Hamilton, which seems likely, I suspect it would be because those two have led the way to a different kind of council. And you can say it's left or right or whatever, but I just don't think that really applies. We're dealing with competence and incompetence when we're dealing with Hamilton Council. We're dealing with people who are relatively fresh faces and people who have been around way too long. And when you're talking about way too long, unfortunately, I have to include Larry Diani in that. That these former and current mayors of Hamilton. They're these another three men who just seem to go around in circles, passing the mayoralty between them to no great effect. Need to move on. Their time is over, and enough already with these guys. And really, as someone who was a member of the Ontario Liberals and the federal Liberals in the past, before I got into the podcast business, I mean, it's these people who these are all. Many of these people are people who've run for the Liberals, run federally or provincially or otherwise, and for some reason, I would say to the federal and provincial party, not I'm in the business of giving them any kind of advice anymore, but if you ever want to come back from the abyss that you're in right now, where basically the Liberal Party hardly exists in Hamilton, particularly the provincial Liberal Party, and hasn't existed in Hamilton for a decade or more, you need to get rid of these guys, get entirely new faces in, younger faces, different faces, people who aren't ankle deep or neck deep in the patronage game, or seeking appointments or whatever. Fresh faces, completely clean the slate. If you ever want to have a Liberal presence in the city of Hamilton in the future, because right now these people just are killing you.
I would dare say I think this might be my listeners might be looking at me saying this is a dead horse, Joel, leave it alone. But I think it all comes back down to the pandemic. And by that, I look at this. The pandemic forced a lot of people to look at themselves, look at what was important in their lives. And I'm not talking like something like life or death. I mean, just like why do I put up with the stuff that I do? Meaning like go on long commutes to a job I don't really like, come home and settle for mismanagement of public services, etc. When we saw the good that public service could do by, with things like CERB and the rent payments and this wage supports that came from the federal government, people viewed it as this is tangible good. I am getting something good from my government. It's not a theory anymore. This is real, right? And I thought that was, and people are saying, well, if we saw like government could actually do good, could actually take the initiative and solve a problem as it was happening, why all of a sudden are we saying, oh, government can't do that? Government can't address these complex issues that, in all honesty, government kind of created. Like people, the fact is we got to figure out better ways of housing ourselves. You and I have said, just letting the market decide our housing situation isn't going to cut it. Yes, we need more, but just saying, okay, that's going to solve it. No, it's not. It's a case of just pushing the problem down the road. And we need all levels of government to come up with inventive solutions, municipal, provincial, and federal. We can't just let this, that's a federal problem. They should put more money into housing. Yes, they should, but maybe we should open up better development of a lot of those buildings and spots that are vacant downtown in downtown Hamilton. Let's talk about really revamping working outside our wheelhouse. And I think people want big and new. They really do. They want that bold, grand initiative, and sadly, we're not getting that from a lot of our elected officials anymore.
Well, certainly the old guard in Hamilton, they direct all their attention at the suburbs, and they think that the suburbs are where it's at. And I think that equation is shifting as Hamilton's core is going through a renaissance right now. The city is changing. The old city is coming alive and becoming a new city. It's an exciting time to be in Hamilton, and that pandering to the worst instinct of kind of suburban perspectives. I don't want to have a go at people who live in the suburbs. I've lived in suburbs most of my life, but the pandering aspect of it, of pretending that there's some kind of Marxist takeover of City Hall. I mean, spare me. No one's buying that. Well, I'm sure some people will, but and the other thing is, here's Deani, who has served as a liberal at whatever level, federal level, who jumps on the bandwagon to agree with him immediately. Well, it's the Conservative MP for Flamborough Glanbrook. Mm-hmm. These are the people that the old guard are knee deep with, and who are not serving the best interests of the future of the Hamilton, who are trying to block LRT every step of the way, who are advocating against in favor of the boundary expansion, who are basically in every case are supporting the wrong side in terms of what more and more people see as the correct path for the future of urban areas in this province. It's disappointing, but I mean, a lot of people think this is going to be a change election. I certainly think it should be really interesting to watch. And there are some, I know I was speaking to someone yesterday, there's some really good candidates coming out of the woodwork now who look like really credible and interesting people, and I'm sure we'll be speaking about them more in the weeks ahead. But long may that continue. It's good for democracy. It's good for the city.
Absolutely. I think progressiveness is the future. We are at heart a progressive country and a progressive people, and again, I think we just need to start thinking bigger and bolder and better, and just stop looking at this stuff as a nuisance. Going back to the John A. Macdonald statue. First of all, it's a fucking statue. Like it's a statue that was built presumably back in the day because people thought, it'll bring tourism to Hamilton, a city that has no direct ties to John A. Macdonald. Like if you're a scholar of John A. Macdonald, you're going to go to Kingston, and the next stop is Ottawa. You just the idea.
Don't get me started on statues. But having started me,
but that's the thing. Like statues are just dumb and stupid. Like
they really are. I mean, and you have to bear in mind the statues are not about whoever it is who's being commemorated. No. Statues are about the person who paid to build it.
Right.
They are about municipal toadying, about sucking up to the King of England. They're about showing that you've got money to burn. They're more about not about John A. Macdonald.
They're about the person who erected them.
They really are.
They're about the person who erected them, not about the person themselves. And that's. I just think like here's the thing. Like there's the people of Hamilton took down that statue. It wasn't the it wasn't the city council who I
think it was taken down by the city, but it was taken down under the it appeared likely that it would come down anyway.
Yes. Okay. I thank you for clarifying. But my point being is that it wasn't because there was no massive uproar, I guess is what I'm saying. Like people were saying, okay, fine, take it down. It's either massive indifference or you're just like, congratulations, good, it's done. The ones who were most upset about it were, again, the old guard who can't face change. And quite frankly, if you're unable to face the change of a statue coming down, how are you going to face the changes that are going to be coming down the pipe in the next 10 years? You just like, you can't, and that's a sad thing.
It's basically that same thing about most people don't like change in any shape or form ever. They don't. And part of the reason why I jump to the defense sometimes of the so-called NIMBYs is because everybody's got a right to not like something. That we all don't like things, and sometimes our reasons for them are not the best. But yeah, it's like, the defense of things like statues that, what about the history? Statues are not history. They are terrible history. If you want to know about John A. Macdonald, you don't go and stand in a park.
Right.
You go and read a book. You go do some research. Like, history is something I care a lot about. I spent, wasted, whatever you want to say, a lot of years looking at history. And boy, did I never go and look at a statue ever, because they tell you nothing. So, the ironic thing is that what will be in the history books in years ahead will be the fact that statues came down. That makes that creates new history. Them sitting there in a park for 200 years or 150 years or whatever doesn't move the historical meter 1 millimeter. So don't worry about the blasted statues. Worry about teaching better history in our schools, because far too many people don't know the first thing, and that goes for our older population as well as our younger population. So much of the history that we have been taught, to an extent, too many years of the heritage minutes and all the rest of it are just chocolate box nonsense, and not real history whatsoever.
Don't knock the heritage minutes. I like those heritage minutes. They're fun.
I'm sorry. I apologize to the nation of Canada for having to go at the heritage minutes. Some of them I've seen as like, really? But I think it's time to learn more about our history. Let's put it that way, and that would be good.
All right, let's leave it at that for today. Thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday with a brand spanking new episode. So make sure you click, listen, subscribe, all that fun stuff. That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.